likes to say that a can-do attitude is way overrated. Now, why would he say that? Because what matters is a will-do attitude. Now, Ken Fisher knows what he's talking about. He's built from scratch a money management firm with $50 billion under management, and Ken attributes his success to a will-do attitude. So take time today and acknowledge and celebrate the proven fact of your will-do attitude. Speaking of celebration, it was so great to hear the song Celebration not that many minutes ago. The great football coach, Bill Walsh, whom I came to know, believed in the power of celebration. Celebration, he said, has two important uses. One is to create a memory of what we've done, a place in our brain where we can always access when we need to. You see, there are going to be times in our lives when we need to remind ourselves of what we can do when we put our minds to it. Walsh's other point about celebration is equally important. Celebrations are events, he said, sacred events. Memories will live forever, but the act of celebrating does not, and it should not. So pick a time when this wonderful celebration will end. That's important. Decide tomorrow, not today, but decide tomorrow how long your celebration is going to last. Maybe it's a week, maybe 2, maybe a month. But tomorrow you pick that date and stick to it. You see, when your celebration ends, you must shift gears. Now you have 20, 30, even 50 years left to make your career really matter. So let's get started. As of today, you are like the climbers of Mount Everest who have arrived at base camp. Now, if you don't follow the sport of Himalayan mountain climbing, it goes like this. It takes years of planning, buckets of money, total focus, just to get to base camp. You fly to Kathmandu, that isn't cheap. You trek for weeks, that's hard. Then you get to base camp. Now, wow, to do all that is an accomplishment. Base camp is 17,600 feet. That's more than a half a mile higher than Pikes Peak in Colorado. I don't know about you, but I would get blue in the face just sitting down and trying to breathe at 17,600 feet. But up ahead lies the real goal, and that's Mount Everest, which is more than 2 miles higher than base camp, a little bit over 29,000 feet. How tall is that? Well, if you took Pikes Peak and put another Pikes Peak on top of it, it would still not reach the height of Mount Everest. Yet making it to base camp is worthy of celebration. It proves that you have a will-do attitude. Sound familiar? It should. You, class of 2014, have made the equivalent journey to get here today to graduate from North Central University. So celebrate, but not for long. Time is precious. The window of opportunity does not stay open for long. The rest of your climb must soon begin. So let me leave the metaphor of mountain climbing and get real. What does it take to be successful? And I mean hugely successful. Success, of course, is many things. For some, it might be a big raise with your new degree in hand. For others, it might be a jump in prestige. I think we all want to leverage our personal successes to give us greater influence. We all want to get big things done. We all want to have lasting impact and to make the world a better place. See, by getting here today, you've gotten yourself into a position to achieve great success. You've demonstrated the vision, the planning, the fundraising ability with the help of your friends and family, the intelligence, the focus, the persistence to get here today. Now begins the thrilling part of your climb. Let me share 7 things I've learned in my position at Forbes. I'm a very lucky guy to work for Forbes. When I want to learn something about success, I simply play the Forbes card. I call a successful person and ask, how did you get to be successful? It's amazing what things people will tell you. Well, here are 7 big things I've learned from these conversations. Number 1, get healthy. Get healthy. Successful people brim with energy. Some are born that way, others need to work at it. Let me ask you, how's your energy? How's your health? Are you fit enough for the climb ahead? The answers are not difficult here. In fact, the United Nations uses a simple diagnostic tool called the Triangle of Health. It's a neat, very easy to understand predictor of health and energy. The first side of the triangle is physical. We all know what that means. If you don't, look in the mirror. Maybe a full-length mirror. Maybe while you're naked. Yikes. Invest in your physical health. Tolerate no excuses. Let nothing stand in the way. Eat smartly. Exercise. Get enough sleep. That's really it. So simple you might miss it. Just do it. This economy requires energy. We must maximize whatever God-given health we have. Think of yourself as an athlete. Now, the second side is emotional. This one, let me tell you, is harder. Ask yourself, is there any mental baggage holding you back? If so, deal with it now. Don't wait. Find a priest. Find a shrink. Find a support group. Do what it takes. Personal story, I recently took some lessons from a Hollywood actor on speaking, and he spent the first lesson teaching me about breathing, just breathing. My notes have breathe, Rich, here. And don't scratch your backside. Pretty simple. Then we spent the next several sessions talking about mental baggage. That's not what I expected. Holy cow. We talked about fear mainly. What makes us afraid? Perfectionism, perhaps. Maybe the fear that we'll look bad. Maybe that we'll suffer terrible humiliation if we fail. But for others, the greatest fear is not of failure, but of success. Maybe deep down we think some bully from our past is going to reappear like a ghost and beat us up if we dare to succeed. Perhaps we misinterpret our religion and the whole idea of humility. After all, who are we to succeed? The point I'm trying to make here is that there are dozens of ways we can sabotage ourselves. Confront these, bring them out in the open, deal with them. Class of 2014, you've worked too hard and come too far to get tripped up now. After today, you'll be playing at a higher level. You simply can't have mental baggage holding you back. The third side is social. Here's a fact that might surprise you. Did you know that single men die a decade earlier than married men? A decade earlier. Now, it turns out the real culprit here isn't the fact of being single. The culprit is isolation. Single men, at least in this country, have a greater tendency to isolate themselves than single women. They drink more, they drive worse, they spend too much time trolling creepy websites. Social health matters greatly, folks, so as you climb the mountain, don't forget your social health. Cherish and nourish your key relationships, your spouse, your partner, your family, your friends, and stay away from creepy websites. Number 2, invest. Invest. Every successful person I've ever met, from Warren Buffett to Bill Gates, from Pastor Rick Warren to the rock singer Bono, looks at $1 of money or a minute of time and thinks about investing it, not consuming it. It's remarkable how consistent is this investment mentality among the very successful. Bill Gates, for example, is now the world's top philanthropist, but Bill wants and expects his billions to do something, to save children from malaria, to build cleaner water systems. Bill Gates is not about giving money away to make himself feel better. That would be for psychic consumption. He's too smart for that. Bill Gates is about investing for real return. Pastor Rick Warren decided he needed to lose weight and get fit. His fundamental view of food subsequently changed. Instead of consuming food to satisfy fleeting desires, which all of us are prone to doing, Pastor Rick now invests in his body as if it were God's temple, which it is. So when you buy a car, invest in no more or no less than you need to in order to feel confident and productive. When you take a vacation, invest in experiences and memories that will refresh your spirit and nourish you years from now. With every dollar or every minute of time, invest, don't consume. Number 3, learn how to trust. Not everyone I've had the fortune of talking to is famous. Let me tell you about a young man from San Antonio, Texas, named Roberto Espinosa. He grew up in Mexico. His family owned a furniture store, and Roberto wanted to own his own business too. So he moved to San Antonio, and he started a restaurant. Now, I don't recommend starting a restaurant. The failure rates are pretty high among all the businesses that you can think of, but Roberto did it. One day, Roberto stepped up to the platform of the service elevator at his restaurant, and it was like stepping into air. The platform gave way, it plunged 30 feet to the basement, and slammed onto concrete. Dazed, he crawled out of the elevator shaft. He slipped in and out of consciousness. He barely remembers the arrival of the first responders. 6 hours of surgery followed. Now, the good news is that Roberto survived. The bad news is road to recovery would be long and painful. A frequent visitor to the hospital after Roberto's family was a friend named Fernando Suarez. Fernando was an insurance salesman who had sold some disability insurance to Roberto, and thank God for that. The restaurant ultimately failed, and disability was the only income that Roberto had. Fernando noticed that Roberto's body was beginning to recover, but his spirit was in decline. So Fernando invited Roberto to try out as a rep at his insurance company, which happened to be Northwestern Mutual, and Roberto accepted. But what does it mean, really, to accept a job selling insurance? These jobs pay only on commission. Is this a real career? Was it a foolish gamble at a vulnerable time in his life? I talked to Roberto, and he said the first 3 years were very difficult. I had trouble making the sales calls. My prospects sensed my lack of conviction. I was so discouraged that I cleaned out my desk 3 times. Then came a turning point that would change Roberto's career forever. I was at a funeral for a client, he said. The deceased man's 8-year-old daughter got up and said she missed her daddy. Then she said her family would be okay, thanks to the disability insurance. Roberto said, I got tears hearing that from an 8-year-old girl. I suddenly knew that what I was doing was very important work.